Hello, dear viewers. We're in our third show of the program, The Solution, where we accumulated quotes from Bala Sulam, the last generation, and we're going to discuss them here in the studio. These writings are talking about the economic writings of Bala Sulam. Hello, Rav Laitman. Hello, everyone. Hello to my friends here in the studio. Rav Laitman, I wanted to say you, at the end of the last program, you spoke negatively about the socialist democratic movements in the world, not to them, just to all the methods. And I wanted to see, apparently these social democratic movements, they are movements that have more social agendas. They're dealing with equality, some kind of mutual consideration, but you were very negative about them. But can you sharpen the socialist democratic movement and what Bala Sulam is talking about, the socialism he's talking about? Socialism in general and social democratic that we're used to seeing in Scandinavia and all kinds of other places. They wanted to build all kinds of places in China. These are egoistic methods that they wanted somehow to sweeten society slightly. They didn't put, let's say, Scandinavia, for example. The other systems are don't exist. Do they put in front of them, those Scandinavians, the goal of being a single society, universal, the same standard of living, insurance, education, healthcare, how one relates to the other, everything as one man with one heart. It's a simple formula, yes or no? And from there, you can get to the stage of love thy neighbor as themselves. Do they have this goal, or is it called a Burgundy's rich society that simply has resources to supply each and every person with a good life, for mothers, single parents, for all the situations of life, death, and that's called social democratic? What's the deal? It says the way society is arranged, looking after connection between us, bringing us closer to each other as one man with one heart, or are we simply just making sure everyone gets what they need in their apartment, their own satisfaction, and that's it? Like in Scandinavia, we see the opposite. You supply everyone a good standard of living, social security, healthcare, and everything. And apart from that, you see there's no families, there's no children, weddings only between two men and two women. Whoever marries them is some woman in a church that's marrying them in some strange way. Equality. And more and more and more. Where do you see here? A normal life without all kinds of warped things. I see this very sick society that only knows how to supply itself with over-materialistic, without any spiritual advancement. One to the other? What are you talking about? Where do you see? With such warped relations between them and laws, I don't see it in a good light. Especially, you need to understand that this society is homogeneous. It's one nation. There's no immigration. There's no foreigners put in to that society, Norwegian, that's so against Israel and everything, with all its justification. Put a few Arabs in there. Let's see what happens to them. Let's see. Very simple. We'll see how they talk then. If I took their, let's see them talk about love, being good to others. It's all very nice to talk, but it's completely not socialistic in the correct manner, where there is no difference between religions and faiths and people in any manner, but rather everyone is only but maintaining the person, which they didn't have in Russia. In Russia, there was another warping. They looked after the country. The country is holy, and every person is worthless. Before we get into Russia, I want to ask you about this model. If I take the social democratic model and I add in a layer of education, do I get the Bala Sulam's solution? No, you'll have to change everything. After education, you'll have to change everything. Because what they did, they put all kinds of patches on the bourgeois capitalist society, which they called democracies, socialism, nothing else. If we look at the system that they built, there's less hungry people, less sick people. Along with that, you say that one man with one heart. I can add that with education. No. Because everything they receive now comes to separate them and not connect them. The foundation is wrong. You don't see a connection between them. You see how they're getting further and further apart. They don't want families. They don't want to mate at all. It's not going in a good direction. Don't think that the fact that you build for an animal a good place to exist in, don't think that you're getting close to developing the human part. But let's say we don't have to ruin everything. We have to give education. We'll give education. Okay, great. And truly, they're talking lately about the Scandinavian method being problematic. And one of the reasons, it says in the papers, that as long as the society was homogeneous, everything was okay. It's very specific. Their whole lives they were alone. The Norwegians, Finland, it's small peoples with very special attributes. And that's why they could exist. They lived in their spirit like they lived even the modern society, so-called, with technology, but they lived with their inner development. They were still way back like one family, like a tribe. So that's why there was no problems. But if we create something equal for our nation, like they did in Scandinavia, is the model of one man with one heart, can it work? No. It can't work against others. Against others is not the future form. It has to be, we're building it as an example for everyone because we want everyone to join it later. Anyone who wants to come, we want to build a good place for everyone. Is it possible that the policy, the social democratic policy, is pushing us away from the correction, and capitalism is better because it's showing us the destruction? Social democracy is truly, it must show us that capitalism cannot come, it can't be corrected by all kinds of additions, like don't call it capitalism, but you call it socialism. It's not socialism, it's capitalism, but with all kinds of things added on. That it's so-called you're doing for their good. But capitalists look after it no less than you. But they don't call it that. We see that in our world. Well, there's no difference, only in names. And it's Everyone's using those slogans for themselves, all these movements, and not for the good of the person, whoever it is. Therefore, of course, you're right in saying it's incorrect, it's misleading, social democratic, etc. But rather, from the crisis in the capitalistic society, we're switching to a new society, the mutual responsibility. So there's no economic system today that will be similar to that new system. No, of course, there's elements here and there. Social Security, the healthcare system, there's elements like that that we supply to everyone. In America and here and in Scandinavia, it's things that are more or less we're trying to work with. But the attitude, the rules and the laws and all these systems will be equal to everyone. I want to read quote number 2. Indeed, as truthful as this ideal might be, I do not promise its adherents even a shred of paradise. Quite the contrary, they are guaranteed to have troubles, as in hell, as the living proof of Russia has already taught us. However, this does not negate the correctness of this ideal. Its only demerit is that to use it is unripe. In other words, our generation is not yet ready to accept this government of just and equal division from the moral aspect. This is so because we have not had enough time to evolve sufficiently to accept the motto, from each according to his skills, to each according to his needs. The Russians wanted to realize this. What is this thing? That you take a nation that has no education, no culture, no development, that at the end of the day, 50 or 60 years before that, they came out of slavery that they had there. Everyone belonged to a master in Russia until the 1800s. Everyone, most of the country, first of all, it was an agricultural country. Everyone lived in villages. And every village belonged to some master. And he was the owner. He could kill people. The person living there had no ability to leave the village. He didn't have an identity card. He had to be under his master like an animal. And that's how it was until 1881. And 50 years later, they had a socialist revolution. Without any education, without any preparation, we're all equal, we're all free, we're all managing the country, we're all for everyone. People had still not gone through capitalism at all. It requires like 1,000 years of development, and they didn't have it. So we can take an example from Russia, but from this thing we can see that first of all there has to be education. You have to explain to a modern person. Today it's different. Today in Russia, capitalism, people ate a lot of bad stuff. They don't belong to anyone and the rest of the world. You can come to a person and explain to him through gradual learning what we are dealing with, especially Since from the side of science and from nature, you have proof that there's no other way, there's no choice. Otherwise, we're going toward nothing. So what do we have to do? That's what we have to do. There's no choice. From all sides, you start showing them that we are not capable of choosing. We cannot discuss in some club or some parliament, international parliament, where to go, in which direction. We have to bring everyone to the discussion table, G50, G20, doesn't matter, and show everyone what nature is presenting to us as the necessary thing. And what does science say? Not just philosophies, but really the scientific nature, without hiding things, based on our nature and our life. What's the data and what's the trends? And according to that, we'll decide. That's what I think we need to do. Whenever we present our explanation, like Bala Sulam says, we always have criticism. What do you want to take us back to Russia? What are you, communists? What are the main differences that we can explain between Bala Sulam's method and what happened in Russia? What are the main differences? I don't think we can explain it to people because they don't understand what the Russian regime was. They don't understand. It was a violent regime, cruel. They wanted to rule the world. It's in their blood. They have a problem. They lack self-appreciation. They feel non-respected. They always have to prove that they're the great ones, the strong ones, that the smart ones. Everyone's like that. No, with them, it's really in a sick way. It's a sick thing. And they had a problem, a very big problem, that it's simply a personal blow. They felt that in building this socialism, that we can show everyone an example for the future of the world. Look at all the years of existence of the Soviet regime in Russia. Look which way they went. They wasted all the natural resources, people, all the strength, just to show everyone that they are the greatest, the strongest. What army did they build? What bombs? What tanks? What did they put into that army? It all went rotten. What did they do with space? They didn't allow the people anything. Everyone ate from hand to mouth. Millions, billions of dollars were thrown to the army and space projects and all kinds of things where they could be things they could be proud of and say, this is us. They didn't think about the people. I'm giving you a conclusion. There was never a thought about the people. They destroyed 40 million citizens of their people. Apart from Hitler, what Hitler did. 40 million people, and others lived like animals. And today as well, what's happening in Russia, until this day, it's all only to show others we're right. They're making a joke of themselves. What do you mean you're right? Look how people are living. Like pigs, like the pigs next to them, that's how they're living. What kind of housing, what kind of salary, what vacation? Nothing. That's socialism. They just played with this world, with this word. Like the Scandinavians are saying about their regime that it's socialistic democratic. What's socialistic democratic about it? That they can give a bit more money to people? Socio is connecting. So in Scandinavia, this connection is natural. The society is homogeneous to begin with. Norwegians, Scandinavians. They're each different from the other, and they don't mix together. Each is a closed nation. Therefore, they can allow this and nothing else. But Russians really warped the socialist word into. They would take people out of their beds at night and kill them. It's worse than in countries, dictatorships in South America. It was terrible. What kind of freedom of speech was there? Nothing. Everyone was put down, controlled. So whoever says that doesn't know what they're talking about. I grew up there. I know what I'm talking about. So the socialism that Kabbalist Dr is talking about, it's a completely different term. It's a true term, and not that I'm sticking a sign on myself and that makes me socialist. And it doesn't matter inside. They played it. And how much did they lose in this game? Those years that they could have built themselves truly, they lost. They can't get them back now. Those years you can't bring back. It's complete destruction for the country. It will never rise up from it. It won't rise from it. This truly gave a huge scar on the whole world for socialism. Yes, a very bad example, and that's why Kabbalist Dr says that they precisely will pay for it dearly. I want to touch on the point where he talks about it failing there. He says fair distribution is the correct method, but he says that people do not know how to. Our society isn't ripe enough to accept it. That we are all part of one pot, that I'm dependent on you and you're dependent on me, and that we're in one system. I don't know how to say it to you. If we don't take each other hand in hand, and we won't be connected to some supplier that will flow through us, the drug of life, like in a general infusion for all of us, then everyone will die. We have to be connected like that between us, from heart to heart, in an emotional way. We're coming to a state where we'll either connect to this spiritual infusion, and it has to go through everyone. It has to go from one to the other, all 7 billion of us, but gradually, but not everyone at the same time. Gradually. First of all, in Israel. We think it's in Europe and it's not developing, but it's coming, and much worse than Europe. God help us. But under the condition that we will start understanding the method that we have to have. If we will not be connected, this pipe with the light of life will not pass through us. We will not be able to survive in the current world that is coming. And we will not be able to bring it to the world as the source of life that will connect to us, to that same pipe, to that same medicine. And then you'll see what we'll have, apart from the problems that we'll suffer from. This is what we must demonstrate to everyone. The Russians didn't even think about it. They had to work. If they wanted to build socialism, they should have built there to build something that's good for them, good for the country. They had all the conditions. They didn't need anything. Everything was in the country. It's not like us here, that apart from sand and sun, there's nothing. The rest you have to attain by sweating. And there's everything. You just need to organize it properly for the society. If they had developed, then they would have truly given an example to everyone. And they built the KGB, they built the army, they oppressed everyone, and hold the whole world in fear of their tanks. They did the opposite. They got an opportunity. And that's why Bala Sulam says they will pay a dear price for it. On the one hand, we're talking about human nature that is egoistic, that's pulling to itself. And on the other hand, Bala Sulam is talking about the ethical side of things. How do you close this gap? Nature is nature, and we're the sensitive element. It doesn't matter that I want to enjoy each thing and from each person, but if I'm suffering, then I'm like a dog. I put down my tail and I see where I can suffer less and move myself into the corner. The main thing is not to be in a place where there's trouble. So despite us being egoistic and along with our ego, what can we do if we suffer? From the side of the ego that wants to acquire the whole world, and the other side of the problems, from the good force and the bad force, as nature is pushing us toward the goal. What are you looking at me? Can we use our ego to reach this ethical place? Just that our ego will drive us? Yes. But not on its own. We need, apart from that, we need a good example. And problems. You're saying just ego. What's ego? Ego is my nature. I'm in the middle. There's problems on one side and like a nice example on the other side. But the nice example, I don't want it. Because here we're talking about connection, being good to everyone, against the ego. I don't feel like it. So I get a blow and I want more. I want, just like with a child. When we educate kids, that's how we educate them. The stick and the carrot. What? So this method isn't good. And you think there's any other way to move you? Tell me how to move people in another way. Well, we're going to sit and wait for blows? We have the method of Bala Sulam, the last generation. Us here. We want to, so in economy, you use exactly the stick and the carrot, but your stick is much bigger than the carrot. You say, we are now going to do this and this that will feel great. You'll be happy. Every month you'll get an extra 50 shekel salary. And you do all kinds of combinations and stuff. So that from that 50 shekels you're giving to each person, you'll get a profit of 250, let's say. That's the whole way economists relate to us. How can you give an egoistic person, how else can you manage him except through sweet things and blows? Only by those two things. But in the middle, you give him education, that he understands where he has to advance toward. And these two forms, plus and minus, like rains, they're there. Like two angels that we sing, like in the song, that like these angels, the good angel and the bad angel, forces of nature, through them I reach correction. Education only helps us to understand, to feel. The smart person sees what's coming, but he's still through the two forces. Education helps me be more sensitive. What's happening in nature? What's happening with quantum physics? What's happening with ecology? With the psychology of people, with society, family, education? What's happening with these things? Why am I getting... Where did I go wrong in general? I have to learn. And then I have recognition of the evil inclination, and then I recognize that I see that in everything I'm making mistakes with my ego. How can I rise above it? How can I arrange these systems? What's nature demanding of me? Education helps me see. We live in a global system, and maybe the Western world is... What about the rest of the world? Do we have to wait for them to be ripe ethically? This world doesn't feel the crisis yet. They feel the crisis in a marginal way. To the extent that it's bad in Europe, then they're also suffering from it a bit, that they're getting less surplus, less help, less orders for work. But they are suffering much less because they're used to a very simple life. And they can easily go back to what they were, to their piece of land, to growing. They know how to survive much better than in Europe. It will be much easier for them than Europe. I want to ask, us as the owners of the method, we want to bring about the correction. How can we know if humanity is ready? Like he's saying here that we won't happen like what happened in Russia, that they had a system and they used it in the bad way. We have to give them an example, not a method. You have to give them an example from yourself. That's called being a light unto the nations. Until you have light that's being distributed in the integral society, you have nothing to give to the world. What will you give to the world? I have the method. I'm ready to teach you. That's... Who are you? What are you? What method? What are you teaching? Show me what's happening. Do you have proof? Something. Education, kids' education, we have a bit of proof. We have books. Oh, you've got books. I didn't write them. Kabbalists wrote them. There's tons of books in the world. I promise you that socialists, there were tons of people. There were Jews there. Who wasn't there? They wrote lots of nice books. Even after Marx, that started the revisionist right after him. They wrote very nice things. So, by writing the book, you're buying something? They can give you a medal, some professor, even the Nobel Peace Prize, but it's nothing. Doesn't mean anything. I want to go back to the quote that we read. Can you explain what a person who's ready from an ethical point of view for socialism? First of all, he's suffered enough and is before the problems that he can more or less see. And on the other hand, against this background, you bring him a method, how to rise above the problems. Otherwise, he won't hear. He's a simple egoist, and in your words, he has to see the instant profit. You give him in a rational manner, in a manner that he can digest, that he can see the result, not so far away. He's willing to buy it, especially since you give it an example that it works. On the condition also that you show him what he's losing from it, what he's gaining from it. There has to be a calculation. If we organize our lives in this manner, I'm not going to turn the world upside down or the country, and not even the city. But let's just start from a certain aspect and see how successful we are. In supply, services, all kinds of things. How much we save, how much we become healthier, etc. Our kids, our families. You're actually going and giving him tips that exist that are being used in those Scandinavian countries, because he doesn't understand more than that. But actually, you're putting him into education. There, you don't need education in Scandinavia. You don't need socialist education, because you're there as one nation. They have a natural feeling that they belong to one nation. And therefore, they agree that we'll distribute things equally. There's 3 or 5 million people in each country. It's a family feeling that they have. And inside, they're developed in a way that they suffer it. But if you're talking about our nation, you have to give them proof. And in his area, in his neighborhood, what he's gaining from it. But again, it all comes with education. And without education, you're giving him some tips for living. I want to go back to the question that Ophir asked you. Why is the social democratic to bring it to Israel along with education, the education process we're talking about? Why doesn't it equal what Baal HaSulam is talking about? It sounds similar. Because this whole approach to equal distribution, mutual help, has to be that we are going toward connection between us. It has to be from that and toward that. And if you begin doing it in a different way, you'll break. It's very, very important what your intention is. In the words of Kabbalah, it's if you intend from the beginning to please the Creator. If not, you can do the most wonderful things and nothing will come of it. Maybe words aren't enough to express it, but that's how it has to be. You don't have to explain immediately to each person, but because you're managing them, but at the end of the day, they have to know for sure that they are doing it for the sake of connection, of unity. Without unity, without a goal that we will be connected, all these benefits will be for the worse. So the main thing is to take some model that gives everyone more or less, not from an intention to get to unity, but using the same act to bring to a goal of connection, and it will succeed. Yes, because it will be in balance with nature. What is going toward nature in a round, integral manner will succeed. Whatever isn't, won't. Through education, they can get this concept more and more and connect with it more and more. Then it will succeed. You said to Ophir that you have to provide an example. First of all, who's you? Who has to give the example? Ophir. No. What do you mean who? All of us. Us as the nation of Israel, because in the past we were in this method. We were one man with one heart. We ourselves, we did it. Now we went through exile. We went into the nations of the world. Now we have to come back out of exile and go back to the previous format. But when we go back to the previous format, we have a connection with the world and we are capable of being a light unto the nations. But you said in a smaller, like you said, a city, a town, neighborhood, if now we want to give an example, what do we actually have to do? Actually, we have to develop an education system in that neighborhood, say, as much as possible to bring everyone into education, kids, parents, individuals in some manner, rules, workshops, courses, workshops, local television, and on the condition that they are in education, then along with that, we'll begin to build along with them complementary systems. Without any economic steps, yes, they'll be complementary. They will complement the existing systems. This is for their lives. Education system and a practical system for completing your materialistic life. Bala Sulam writes that one of the principles, most important principles, that each one according to his ability and each one according to his needs. Can you explain this? Yes, it's what happens to us in every integral system. That each and every element looks after itself to the extent that it needs to exist, and beyond his basic necessities, he 100% tries to be effective to the rest of society, to the rest of the system. Just like an electronic system, cables, wires, transistors, each of them always needs something to survive for themselves. They have like tension, they have energy. But after it exists, all the rest participates in the entire system. And it has to contribute to them somehow. And there's no limitations from his side or any other calculation except to be a part of a system. Us people have to, each of us with ourselves, from this superior knowledge, to be in opposition to our ego, to create, to be connected. Just like the electronic parts in an electronic system. You're saying, what are you comparing a person to, like a transistor or something? Yes, but he does it by himself because he recognizes the whole system, he knows it, all of it in detail, and knows which element he must be, in which work he must be. He knows his personal work from his working with the entire system. He raises himself to a level above the entire system because he understands that his role, the content itself, its plan, there are things in this plan that are in awareness and everything himself. The fact that he's making it himself, doing it himself. So that's what it means, everyone according to their capabilities. There are two lines that I'm not managing to put together. On the one hand, in order to reach this feeling of the system, we have to create certain conditions here that Bala Sulam is speaking about. On the other hand, as long as we don't feel the system, how can we behave according to these principles? There's something not coming together. What comes first? Education. But we're running out of time. We're behind. To the extent that we try to get to people, we're like a tsunami that we're trying to run away from. We must hurry based on what's happening in the world. We see that every day there's not such pleasant news. Not a very pink future. Therefore, it's clear, one thing is clear. The more people will know about what's coming and what state we have to reach, based on all the research, that will give us more material for working with. This will allow us to arrange something for them. They will be in another level. You can't make changes in the world with the masses that exist today. I'll tell you, there's something pressuring me. On the one hand, we're supposed to... On one hand, you're talking about the future that's supposed to come here. And on the other hand, where the financial people who are explaining it, there's also a lack of time. There's really a problematic situation. Our problem is not that we are stupid, that we're missing a brain. We're missing emotion. We're missing experience. This new system you can understand only when you connect to others. That you use, that you're not using his mind or your mind, but rather the connection between the two. And that's what we don't have. That's why we're not creating those places, those circles, where we can feel the system and start implementing it. We're missing the unity connection. It's like this, how do we create this thing that will give us the first advancement toward these models he's talking about? What has to happen? What has to be ripened in society? On the one hand, we have to be ripe for it. On the other hand, education. On the other hand, education. Being an example. There's so many parameters that have to come together at the same point so that it will really succeed. If nothing comes to this circle, then this thing could be destructive. No. Because it's not you doing it. You just have to try. And through you, the upper force is coming with this, the force of nature is coming because you're already in some kind of relation with others, and it's already working through you to others. And it has to connect you. You simply have to be inclined. That's it. I want to go back to each man according to his needs. Let's call it the operating system. Is this something a person will be able to supervise by themselves? Society will force him and encourage him. How? With a stick and a carrot. Why do you think it will all come from the sky? From some pink cloud falling on you? And you become like silk? I don't understand why, how as an individual I will act. Compared to how I get up now, I get up in the morning, I make my coffee, I know what time I need to leave, I know what my salary is. How will it look, my life, in Baal HaSulam's reality? You're not thinking about family, you're not thinking about yourself. Of course you'll have it on the condition that you think about society. That's not clear to me. I get up in the morning, I go to work to make money. You tell me you'll wake up in the morning to think about society, to contribute to society in the most optimal manner. Invest the most to get the most from society. Why isn't it understood? I don't get it. Because you, inside, you don't have that exact feeling where you're contributing more, where less, where you're losing. It's completely disconnected from your current desires, yes. But through this, that you'll connect with others gradually, you'll start to feel how your desires, how the good goals and feelings of society will suddenly, they'll suddenly be important to you and will come instead of all the previous egoistic goals that you had. To that extent, the feeling I'll get, you'll exchange it. How a mother feels the child's good more important than hers. She didn't have it before. She gives birth to a child, and that's it. Everything for him. What about her? She's like a machine, just for him. That's how it works. You'll also be like that towards society gradually. Am I being prepared somehow for this? There's something called a special spark. From the beginning, we were like this. We were created like this in our foundation, as one system called the first man. And this system broke into parts, and that's why we feel ourselves disconnected. And now, through this awareness, by making an effort by ourselves to develop, we have to go back to that system, to that format of the first man. That's what our connection is called. And this spark, what's covering it, you have a memory from that previous state, a reshimo, and it's developing you in an egoistic manner. If we look at this sentence, everyone according to their capabilities, everyone according to their needs, and before we talked about reaching ethical level, what do we need the stick for? If we're ripe from an ethical point of view, does this happen naturally, or no? The fear, the sentence, the pressure, social pressure has to be above everyone to the extent that a person still is not capable of managing himself correctly. And a person will want to have it. Let's say like I want, like say I have a disease in some place, God forbid, I will feel it's a sickness, a disease, and I'll go deal with it. And if I didn't feel the pain, I wouldn't deal with it. And then it might develop into something irreversible. I want there to be a stick. I want there to be pressure. I want there to be something stinging me. I want blows. I don't care. Because if I am participating wrong in society, I want to get a negative reaction so that I'll learn. If it won't teach me, then where will I get self-criticism? I want to get it. A person begins to rise above his ego, to see his ego as something that needs to be corrected. He doesn't identify with the ego. Oh, you hurt me. Where's the respect that I deserve? No. You say the opposite. Where is that horrible thing in me that's not doing what it should? And you want to feel against it, the pain, and then you'll relate to it properly, that you want to be above it. You really are working on yourself. In the previous show, we talked about that respect will never go away. If we start rising above it, excellent that you reminded me, because then you turn this respect that you had before into respect, superior respect for society. Something else. Where's the respect I deserve? Look how much I did for society. And you'll have it. You don't have to hide it. If you did something really big for society, everyone's enjoying from it and you're like hiding. That's a very high level. But actually, you don't have to have it, because you need to give an example like this. This is how you're giving an example to people. We'll give you a big plate, a big medallion, and you'll walk around with it. We'll give you respect. We'll give you some flowers, a crown, and everyone will see how important you are, and you'll accept it, and you'll show everyone how happy you are, how much you're enjoying it. Why? Not for yourself, to awaken others, that they'll want to do the same thing. There's an educational aspect. You yourself, you don't need that stuff. You just care that you did it, and you don't care who knows. But to bring peace to the world, you have to do it. Give an example. That's the intention that he meant when he said that it won't disappear ever, to have respect at that level. And if everyone contributes equally, everyone according to his capabilities, etc., it's equal. You're right, it's equal. So then how will one be more than the other? But you're talking about the end of correction where everyone's 100% doing what they're capable of. Don't talk about the final format. The final format, we're all in a different reality, in a different perspective. We're in the spiritual perspective, spiritual realm, dimension. We stop feeling our body. It no longer exists in the upper dimension. From the moment you switch from your feeling to society feeling, your senses begin to disappear in importance. They're still there. You feel it, you live physiology, but gradually you start to come out of your senses. You start losing your senses, how they exist. They're sort of automatic. They exist until you no longer pay attention, until you truly, and then it disappears. It disappears. Because you, instead of that, start to feel another body, and in this other body is much stronger. It's more impressive. It feels like life. This is society's desire. You feel it as eternal. And here it's something, it's a little animal. So competition at the end of the day will be the drive to get respect from society. Yes, exactly like you say, it'll bring you to this new level, and then we come out of this level of existence in reality where we feel ourselves and bodies, the universe, our world, the planet, and all the systems that we built. All this is just a means to reach connection in society. We come to the state of one and merge in it, in perfection. Okay? With the economist. We came to the end of another show, The Solution, a very interesting, exciting show. Thank you, Rav Laitman, and my friends here in the studio, and be with us in the